Morning, everyone. My name is Sabelo Dlamini. I'm the director of Sunren, as I was introduced yesterday. I don't have an iPad, so I'll be operating from the paper this morning. It seems as if we had a very good party yesterday. It's a good sign, but yeah, we've been trying to get people to come into the main room from downstairs, but it seems as if we will be good now. We are about to start. So we've got two keynote speakers this morning, Barry Ewing and Alicia, Alicia Florio from Europe, both of them. Alicia will start with our keynote presentation, followed by Barry Ewing. Just to formally introduce Alicia, Alicia Florio is a strategy and policy officer at NordUnet Strategic Engagement Division. Her focus is on European partnerships and European research infrastructure. She has 20 years of experience in deploying trust and identity infrastructure and managing complex programs and bridging technical and policy domains. Alicia has led most of activities to make up the current European and global authentication landscape for research and education. Currently, she is the project coordinator for AARC3 projects, and she is managing operational quality assurance in the context of EOSC, European Union Node Service Delivery. Her title for today will be Building Federated Infrastructure in the Research and Education Community. Please welcome Alicia to the floor.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I always feel about a rock star with these microphones, which I'm not. So thank you very much for having me here. It's an honor to be here, and thank you very much for the very kind introduction. I certainly have enjoyed the dinner a lot and the food yesterday. I mean, it's really amazing. And it's nice to see many of you this morning coming here to listen to me and Barry talk. So you have heard about me, so I will skip this because we'll go over things a little bit. But just want to say that before joining NordUnet, I worked for Géant, and before that Terena. So Géant is the merging organization that resulted for merging Terena and Dante. So I took, somehow, ChatGPT seems to know a lot about me. So when scary. Actually, ChatGPT could do a better profile of myself than what I can do myself, which is really fascinating. So as you can see, there are a lot of locks there, and that's because I've worked a lot on the identity and security side. Well, more on the identity and the security, but you will see more. So just a little bit about NordUnet, as many of you have asked. Unlike the name, NordUnet is not located in Norway. We are located in Denmark, and you can see basically Denmark is this small country here, where at this point in time it's pretty fresh and cold and dark, so it was very nice to come here and see the light again, the sun. NordUnet is a not-for-profit organization, is the association of the research and education networks in the Nordics. So there are 5 organizations that are also those public organizations, located in Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Finland, and Iceland. And together, they really were established to provide the internet connectivity for the research and education. So NordUnet exists for about 40 years. And this was, in fact, the time when the internet was being rolled out, and where particularly the internet for the research and education. This is not a talk about the internet, but I love to start from that because it really planted the seed for everything that we are doing now in addition to the internet and to the connectivity. So I think the main tipping point for the internet, what brought the internet to become something really not for the geeks and for the nerds, for the scientists, but for everybody, was really the creation of the web. And that opened up opportunities that not even 13 had envisaged. I think not even in their wild dreams could have imagined what we could have done with the internet a few years later. So this basically allowed the internet to grow, and there was much more demand because all of a sudden universities were having internet, home, were being connected. And this is unbelievable, but this is a picture for the Daily Mirror. This was issued in the 2020, so even then people thought that this internet is just something that passed by. And I think this should tell us why we should never do forecast, and certainly never in written, because somebody then will use them for the slides to say, look what they were thinking back then. But how does the network look now today? This is a map that I took from the Giant website. Besides being so colorful, which is nice, I think what jumps out, and besides being a bit European-centric, and I apologize for that, but that's the map I found. What jumps out here is that all the countries are interconnected, and that the network is federated. So there isn't a monolithic entity that rules it all. There are regional networks, national network. For instance, Nordnet is a regional network. And as you can see, there is no link here to the Nordics, and that's because all the network connects through Nordnet, and that is brought up to the rest of the Nordic countries. And then you can see the network is complex. There are different capacity, different technology, different layers that come together. But what matters, though, is that it works at scale. And as you can see, because there is more demand, more research, more users, in only 10 years we went from the max link, which was 10 gig, to 400 gigs. I mean, that's really amazing. And my network colleagues tell me that the big links are being saturated in the Nordics. So it's really used. It's not just over-provisioned. Now, what is also important about the network is that it was built because all the network was conceived by the military, so they were concerned, and they wanted to have redundancy. So the network comes with redundancy, and now with the current geopolitical situation, which I will not say anything about that, the network is becoming a target as well, which I don't think we had thought this could happen, but this is happening. And now Nordnet is leading a feasibility study to look at how to build the connectivity through the Arctic, which means laying down fibers under the ice on the North Pole and connecting basically Europe directly to Canada, US, and Asia via Japan. So creating redundancy, but also opening up new paths and not go through the usual old paths. So, but what I want to say is, this is not a talk about the network, but I'm talking about the network a lot. But what I would like to ask you, what's so unique about the network for research and education? Anybody? What you would say it's unique?
Same credential, access everywhere in the world.
That's one thing. Good, good. That's very good. And that's where I want to go. Well, normally people would say fat pipes. We have the fastest network, we have the super availability, we have capacity, and that's all true. I mean, we have really an amazing network. But I think there are two things that are very important. What the gentleman said, that's federated, and the access to the network is federated, and the trust. And that's what I want to talk about, because this has been a key element that has allowed us to build really infrastructure at scale. I will not talk a lot about the technology. And the reason is that it's not that we don't care about the technology. Of course we care. We are IT people, right? We care. But I think technology is a mean to an end. And of course you need the right technology to do great things. But the technology, one thing that we know for sure is that it will change. We know that, because there are new things that are invented, because you need to support more use cases, and there will be new technology. So, and if you look here, if I would ask all of you, do you know what protocol you are currently using right now when you connect through your computer, your laptop? Do you need to care? Well, if you are a network engineer, of course you care, but otherwise it works. And you only care when it doesn't work, you start panicking. What's wrong here? What's happening? And that's what it should be, indeed. So, but I want to talk about trust a bit. So say I show up at some of your homes, and I ring the bell. Would you let me in? You probably, you start, the brain starts processing. Well, she doesn't look too dodgy. Maybe she's not a murderer. But, what does she want? Why is she here? Now you meet me here. You are more open to talk to me because we are in a trust environment. I'm the same person, but our brain, processes context a lot. So how do we map this human processing to a network processing where, thank God, there isn't a lot of emotion in the network yet? Well, of course, I have to mention Taylor Swift, because she is the star of the moment, but I didn't know she was a philosopher also, which apparently she is. And she did say that, you can Google. She said that trust does not scale. And there is some truth there, indeed. I mean, I will trust you. I will trust your best friend because you tell me it's good, maybe the other best friends, but the more the chain grows, the less I feel comfortable with that. But yet, we manage to build infrastructural skills. Look at Edurom. You trust me to access the network here based on what Nordnet says about me. Nordnet says, yeah, she's okay. She works for us, good. And look at the scale. So how did we manage to get to this scale then if trust does not scale? Well, and that's a combination of things that come together with technology, with policy, with legal frameworks and the likes. But as fundamental, there's one fundamental thing, and that is our community is not in competition with each other. We do all we can to build things together. And Edurom is growing. There is still some gray area there to cover, but at some point we will reach capacity, I believe, because there are no territories to conquer anymore. But still, the number of authentication, I like this picture, I got this from Jean, it keeps growing. I mean, 7.5 billion of national and international authentication last year. This is great. I was so happy to have Edurom at the airport. In fact, I didn't even realize I was on Edurom. I just realized I was connected to a Wi-Fi. I thought, how is this happening? I didn't say, okay. And then it was Edurom. I was, wow, you guys rock. Then my grandfather used to tell me, and that's because we Italians have trust issues, clearly, you should not trust anybody unless you have eaten a ton of salt with them. And I was thinking as a kid, what is a ton of salt? And he said, a big mountain. How can I eat a big mountain of salt with somebody? So, and then he said, yeah, that's why you should never trust anybody. That was the conclusion. Now, I didn't know that my grandfather was quoting Cicero, and I think he didn't know either. It was just something that we probably inherited from the Romans, along the way. But there is something about that. It takes a long time to build trust, and also technically. And, you trust your system, you trust your bank online, you trust, but then something happens, and all of a sudden, you get concerned. Can I trust this again? Did they really fix this or not? And that's how it happens. There is context, there are other things. But then there is still this need, this driver, for this global collaboration in our community. We have to trust researchers coming from different places to access computers, to access VMs, to access everything, and also to share their research with each other. And we have to make this to scale. So how do we reconcile these two needs effectively? Well, you probably have seen this picture. It's a very old picture, but I find it still very funny to have, especially if you have dogs at home. The internet was not built with the identity layer. The identity was an afterthought. When the internet became pervasive, people started to think, oh, I need to have some way to let users come in, log in. And what happened in the early days, some of you must remember, not everybody is super young in this room, I think, you would have a set of credentials per services, and service and credentials, and at some point you try to self-federate yourself. You say, I will use the same password for all services, right? So then if your password was hacked, there you were, completely screwed. But hey, you needed a way to remember all these passwords. And Kim Cameron is dead, sadly, but he's been very instrumental to drive this idea of the identity layer. And he had this blog, very influential, about the identity laws, to start say what the identity should look like. How can we create this identity layer? So if you have the chance, have a look at that, because although it's not very new, it's still, there are concepts that are still very actual. And he said that this limits what we can do, not having this identity layer, and exposes us to dangers. Well, I don't think we've been limited by that, in fact. That has pushed us to do something to fix the problem. And of course, there are dangers. Yes, that's true. But it was really basically with the grid computing, and some of you must remember about that, this idea that you have this grid that you can plug in and use services from wherever you are, which sounds very familiar to what the data spaces want to do now, right? With different technology, maybe more mature technology, but the idea is there. And then they started to think, oh, but how do we let all these people from all over the world to access our resources? So, for instance, CERN was very much involved into that. CERN has a reputation, has a lot of expensive machines and that need to be protected. So how did we do that? And that's when the technology started to come around, and that's where we started to build the authentication and authorization infrastructure, AAI, double A, actually I should say double AI, to avoid confusion. And I believe many of you are still using digital certificates for some things. And this was really, I mean, it was the hype of PKI at the time. You know, I was told then that PKI, we really thought there will be one PKI for everything. And then people moved to the opposite. PKI will die. I mean, I think neither is true. PKI is there to remain because underpins a lot of things that we need to do. We need encryption, and that's one of the ways to do that. And this works very well, provided strong authentication, strong vetting, identity vetting, to allow users online. Comes also with other trust problems, because the trust is that, do you trust the authority that issue your certificate? Well, if it's in the list of trust authorities that is recognized by the browser, application, etc., you'll have to pay, so yes, you recognize that. But back in the days, people would run their own certification authority, so they had to share the trust roots so that the certificates could be validated. So still, they managed to figure this out, to create a group to assess this trust root and to distribute it, the trust root for e-science. This was the IGTF, International Grid Trust Federation, which is still active and doing other things right now. So, but then at the same time, new technologies come up with SAML, with others, and people start to look at federated identity management. Wouldn't it be easier for people not to have to bother with certificates and renew the certificate and do all these things? Just, you know, you authenticate at your own home organization and you access all other services. Well, yes, that was a great idea. And in fact, this is when the identity federation were created. But then again, trust. I have my federation, so how do I let a user from South Africa to go to access services that are in Italy, for instance, right? You need a way to trust, and that's when Eduron was created to aggregate all the metadata from all the federations, so it's really a trust root in a way, so that services can trust the authentication of these trusted identity providers that are in Edugain. And Edugain is also growing. You see that, you know, the federation in South Africa, they are doing great. So there is still some land to cover here too. We'll see how far we will get. But what I want to focus more is that the research side has really boomed in the last years. And whilst before the high energy physics were really the main driver, and the astronomers probably, we saw now a lot of other research, at least in Europe, a lot of thematic area, the Earth observations, the HPC, life science, art and humanities, and they all have slightly different needs, but certainly they all agree on the importance to have federated access to their services and to have an AI that caters for them. So how do we make sure that all this could use federated access? Now here there is a catch. And the catch is that the National Identity Federation were conceived with the idea to allow access to services based on the affiliation. So I will be allowed on a service because I work for Norgenet or I work for the University of London or what have you. And that was mostly driven by the need to let access to publishers where they charge the institutions, and therefore this was the main driver. The research infrastructure, and you may have been in a research, you get access because you are a principal investigator, because you are something else. Where you come from, yeah, it's sure important, but not essential for you to use resources. So how do we allow this authorization based on the role you have in the collaboration? Your own organization cannot encode all these roles because otherwise they will go crazy. You are on 10 projects, you change, I mean, it doesn't scale. So this is when the ARC project was created. We got funding at the right time, and we got the researcher together, the Identity Federation together, and we say, okay, now, let's fight, let's see what comes out. And then, from that, we created a blueprint architecture. It's an architecture that basically offers a single integration point for all services, supports multiple technology, in fact, it's technology agnostics, and really provides a blueprint for those that have to deploy AI for science in a way that they can interoperate. So basically, if you look here, just very briefly, there is a proxy here. That's where the integration point comes from. So an AI that is built on modeled after this architecture will connect to Edugain as a service provider. Services connect to this AI, and from the service perspective, the AI works as an identity provider. So it's a two phases, right? It's like with this God, Greek mythology that you have this God with two faces. So, and Jean started to deploy then the first instance of this blueprint architecture, which was EduTeams, and then they started to roll in academia, which was this validation service to allow to offer student discounts, basically. If you are a student and you can demonstrate that by logging in by your federation, you get a student discount. But then, at the end, it became cumbersome to have all kind of bit the same underlying stack for doing different things. So that's where the Core AI platform was created, and effectively, this represents, in a way, this identity layer that was not there in the internet. And this is only the start, of course. This will evolve. The main service that is built on top of this stack is called My Access ID, and as the name gives it away, it allows access to high-performance computing, the data, the research infrastructure, and the education. I will not talk about the education because this is typical, it's very European-centric. There is a program in Europe to give grants to students to spend a certain period of time abroad studying at another university. I believe max is 9 months. After that, you take exams there, and grades are transferred back to your home universities, and there are lots of things there that are happening right now. But what I want to talk a bit about is HPC. Because in Europe, we have this thing that's called European Commission, and that comes with good things. One of the good things is the funding that we get. There is a lot of funding for infrastructure to support research and education. And in fact, the European Commission, the Euro HPC, co-sponsored, in collaboration with the member states, the creation of 9 supercomputing centers in Europe. So that's quite a lot. And the vision, this is the interesting part, was that there should be a federated AI that accommodates, that allows access to high-performance computing resources for a wide range of users. Those facilities are expensive, so they are not only open to researchers, but also to companies and to public sector, industry, and so on. And the idea is that this AI should be federated and built on My Access ID. This is really something powerful. So the Commission is recognized that what we are doing is fit for purpose, and should also allow to plug in EIDs, because industry cannot log in a federated manner, but they should be able to log in with the national ID that is compliant with EC regulations, that in this case is EIDAS. Now, I cannot say much more about this because There is a procurement ongoing, and Nordnet is participating in one of the bids, and there is a standstill period now. So that's all can be said about this, but you will hear more about that in the future. What I want to talk very briefly is about EOSC. As I said, this is the name of the initiative. This, in a way, the evolution of the grid idea that allow the idea to share this data and to have a platform where researchers can access, do computation, do analysis, etc. So EOSC has been around for a while. There's been a massive investment from the European Commission here and also from the member state to create data centers and so on. And in last year, there was again another procurement from DC, which was won by the Polish Supercomputing Center, which is also the National Research and Education Network, and Nordnet is participating in this procurement as well. And the idea here is to build a EOSQ node. So what is this node? It's a platform to support multidisciplinary and cross-border research to promote open data and fair data in Europe. So it comes with this platform, user can log in, and with a number of services that are prepaid so that users can just use those services, and there is a quota per user. The service was launched in October this year and will go on for 36 months. Valentine's Day was my second name for this contract Valentine. So this is how it looks like. You basically log in. There is a web portal. You log in, and based on your IDP information, you get a profile via the AI that is used here is my access ID. You get a profile and a persistent identifier, and here are the services that I could use. Not all of them, because I'm not a researcher, so I'm not allowed. I don't have enough credits to do virtual machines. But in theory, I can put all my data on a file sync and share. I can use the interactive notebooks. And this is a very interesting concept because not everybody has access to these tools in their own home. Some have, some others not. So it's nice that the researcher can use this. Access to this is limited to European. However, that's because of, funding and the likes. However, as a user, I can create a project and I can invite non-European researchers to work on the platform, so effectively they can also have access. What's important about this? All these services, some of them are commercial services also. So they existed independently before this procurement. They were not created for this purpose. But the interesting aspect is that they are deployed in an environment that's not controlled by the service, is controlled and managed and operated on behalf of the Commission by other parties. So all services are offered under the same policy, and they are subject to the same privacy, GDPR, etc. So this is something really different, and this platform provides, in addition to the double AI, provides also monitoring, central help desk. So it's really a different way to deliver services. So in all this, you see that the identity is really, I was in a rock mood when I made the slides. It's really important, essential, it's a key asset. Now, can you imagine if your federated credential, if you're hacked, if there is something wrong, right? Not only you compromise the service at your own organization, but all the service that you can access, and that's a lot. So, and still, we have built a trust mechanism whereby there are mitigation measures so that services and resources trust the federated model. And there's been a lot of investigation how to do security incident management in federated environment. There are frameworks in place, etc. Still, unless you want zero risk, you'll have to let nobody on the network and really close everything down, but that's impossible. But what's interesting is that the industry has realized that. And there is, I don't want to say there is a competition, but this is a space that generates a lot of revenue. There is a lot of monetization on identity, also on the academic identities. There is no difference. And if you look, on one end, the industry is really gearing up and putting a lot of effort and dollars there. And if you look at our identity federation, such a great asset, most of the identity federation operate on a shoestring. How is this possible? Shouldn't this be important as artificial intelligence or cybersecurity? Shouldn't be the identity, isn't identity a core asset of the cybersecurity aspect? So, and with this, I want really, this gets me to my conclusion. I think this community has been really great in creating this trust mechanism that does scale with different technologies, with different layers. We did that, and there are good examples of that. And what we did was really, our identity federation have been conceived with privacy as the main element. Privacy didn't come as an afterthought. It was partially because we were obliged, being, public organization, etc., but also because we do care about our users. We don't want to sell their data. On the contrary, we want them to share, and all the information is shared with a minimum disclosure principle to the service. Only what is absolutely needed for the service, of course, to function. On the other hand, there is the tension from the researchers, right? They want more. They have new ideas, they have new tools, and at least in Europe, the need for strong assurance, identity assurance, is really very strong now from the HPC communities, from the life science community, those that have more sensitive data. And that's because the environment has changed, and the trust need to be supported in a different way. So one of the things is that they want to use federated authentication, but they require, in addition to that, identity vetting based on your passport, for instance. And this puts a lot of burden on the institutions to do that. It's not scalable. So we are looking into other ways to provide this as an additional service that is done by different companies that are better suited for that. Also, Edugain is looking at how increase the security and the baseline. There's a lot of work on the baseline on Edugain right now. So and there are working groups where all this discussion is happening. So trust is everything, and I believe that is an important thing that we have and that other communities do not have. But as we learned yesterday, I think, you need a vision where you want to go. And you need, in this case, not only courage, but also funding to make sure that you can be courageous and take the next step. And I believe that the next years are going to be really critical for the Research and Education Federation to get to that next level. And with this, thank you very much for listening. And if there are questions, happy to answer. Yeah?
Any questions from the floor? Okay, no, it seems as if the message was clear. I'm glad that there are also NREN leaders here. I saw a bit of gray areas when Licia was showing the map, especially on the SADC countries. I think, colleagues, we need to do something there, especially activating EduRoam to be seamless around the region, and also the federated identity, and also these services to be shared across SADC. So on Sunday, I think we had a meeting discussing some of this, but we just need to get on the ground and try to make sure these services are available for all our research and education communities, especially SADC region, and then we can make sure the whole of Africa is covered. But I saw lots of gray areas within SADC. So colleagues, let's please work on that. Thank you. Thank you very much to Licia for joining us for this presentation and also sharing this much valuable information.
Thank you so much for having me here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.